From Keene in the Shire, the Liberty Media capital of the world, this is Darrell W. Perry, host of FPP Radio News for Tuesday, February 9th, 2016. Silver is trading at $15.34 per ounce. Gold is valued at $1,197 per ounce. And according to BitcoinAverage.com, the average price of Bitcoin is $376. Antiwar.com reports fulfilling a campaign pledge to end his nation's involvement. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has announced that all Canadian airstrikes against the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria will end by February 22nd at the latest. Trudeau campaigned heavily last year on his promise to end Canadian airstrikes, a position that grew in popularity amid reports that the Canadian Defense Ministry had covered up allegations of civilians killed in the airstrikes. Among the Canadian airstrikes, the deadliest to be made public was an attack against a dairy, which Canadian officials claimed was a weapons factory. That strike killed 10 civilian workers and wounded 20 others. Though the U.S. was seen as annoyed at Canada ending its airstrikes, the Pentagon on Monday ignored the report and instead announced that Canada had promised to triple the number of ground troops they are committing to northern Iraq. At present, Canada has up to 70 ground troops in Iraq, so the tripling will mean at most another 140 Canadian troops. Canadian trainers have been involved in some high-profile clashes with the Islamic State troops in the past, though are believed to have been moved back away from the frontier since then. For nearly 40 years, Roberts & Roberts Brokerage has been a trusted source for buying and selling precious metals like gold and silver. They also take Bitcoin for precious metal purchases and have permanently removed the minimum purchase amount for all orders paid in the digital currency. Call Roberts & Roberts today for knowledgeable advice on buying and selling precious metals and a forward-thinking approach to new technologies. 800-874-9760 or visit online at rrbi.co. UPI reports a winter storm is expected to bring 3 to 8 inches of snow throughout most of Massachusetts, as neighboring New Hampshire could see some snow ahead of presidential primaries. Blizzard conditions are expected in Cape Cod, southeastern Massachusetts, and its islands. Many schools in the state, including those in Boston, Cambridge, Arlington, Chelsea, Salem, and Barnstable, were not open on Monday. Massachusetts Governor Charlie Baker closed state offices in eastern Massachusetts for non-emergency personnel in anticipation of the storm. Some cities in Massachusetts introduced parking bans on Monday. In Boston, where between 8 to 12 inches of snow is expected, the snow began falling between 4 and 6 a.m., and the heaviest snowfall is predicted between 7 a.m. and 2 p.m. At least 2 flights have been canceled from Boston's Logan International Airport. In New Hampshire, where presidential primaries are scheduled for Tuesday, a snowstorm recently brought up to 10 inches of snow in some areas. A winter weather advisory is active throughout the state, with the possibility of light snowfall throughout much of New Hampshire on Tuesday. There is a 20% chance of precipitation on Tuesday in Manchester, the state's largest city, and a temperature of 29 degrees. In Woodstock, there's a 20% chance of snow and a 30-degree high. The Daily Decrypt is a Monday through Friday newscast about all the best news in cryptocurrencies and peer-to-peer networks. Know what's hot in the world of digital money, borderless trade, and cutting-edge communications. Available on YouTube, SoundCloud, and Facebook video. The Daily Decrypt is the news of the future. Reuters reports a U.S. federal judge denied for the second time a request by Texas to bar relief agencies from bringing Syrian refugees into the state, a decision that could have a bearing on the attempt of 30 other governors to block refugees from their states. U.S. District Judge David Godbee said the Republican leaders who have fought the resettlement have not shown Texas would suffer irreparable harm. The same judge rejected in December the state's request for a restraining order, saying the evidence presented was largely speculative hearsay. Godbee wrote in the decision, "The court does not deny that Syrian refugees pose some risk. That would be foolish. In our country, however, it is the federal executive that is charged with assessing and mitigating that risk, not the states and not the courts." President Obama has pledged to take in 10,000 people fleeing war-torn Syria and has so far admitted 2,000 refugees. Europe is dealing with millions of refugees fleeing conflict in the Middle East and Africa. Since fiscal year 2011, 243 Syrian refugees have resettled in Texas, making the state one of the main U.S. relocation sites since the Syrian civil war erupted about 5 years ago. This has been FPP Radio News, online at fppradio.com.